CrackBerry.com.
Hey everybody, Kevin here for CrackBerry.com, joined by Adam Zeiss, and this is our BlackBerry Q10 review podcast. Here it is. This is the BlackBerry Q10. It is the BlackBerry you've been waiting for anybody who loves a physical keyboard. This is the first BlackBerry 10 phone that the company has released on the new BlackBerry 10 operating system. The Z10 has been on the market for a while already in around the globe, and now the Q10 is going to start rolling out. If you're a person who loves a keyboard on a phone, this is it. You have no other choices, right? You can stop watching this review. You can quit reading this review. Just go buy one, because really the market out there has conceded the physical keyboard to BlackBerry. Nobody else, I think, these days even makes
not any decent ones.
Any decent one. I can't even look. I can't even tell you the name of another physical keyboard phone right now. So this is it. So the real question is it the phone you want? You know, you have options. Stick with a BlackBerry with a keyboard, or switch to a touchscreen, whether it's from, BlackBerry or something else. To me, I'm thinking you want the Q10. Bottom line is the keyboard is great. It's fast. It is a huge difference and step up from the old BlackBerry platform. We'll get into the details in a bit. And it's a BlackBerry through and through. From the look of it, the feel of it, the performance is better, and it is really the the BlackBerry of your dreams.
Your dreams. I've been waiting for.
Okay, so let's start. We're gonna go through everything. I want to start on the hardware side. Sure. So I know it's mainly the same as this on the inside.
Yeah,
so let's do a little.
The guts are all the same. It's got a 1.5 gigahertz processor, 2 gigabytes of RAM. But obviously the big difference is this, the screen sizes. The Q10 has a 3.1 inch screen. It's 720 by 720 resolution at 330 ppi. So it's a good deal.
Yeah, it's a high bright display. You can see the difference here between the 9900 moving over to the Q10.
The little extra room there.
Yeah.
No more buttons or trackpad, which is I think a big thing for a lot of people.
Which, yeah, let's talk about that in a bit, because that's definitely a different BlackBerry look when you first see it.
Sure. But yeah, I mean, overall, it's basically, the guts and the internals you're going to find it's the same as the Z10, and it's got the 2 gigabytes of RAM. So I think it pretty much flies around for the most part. We haven't had any issues with it. And it's got 16 gigabytes internal storage, and memory card you can fit up to 64 gig memory card, which you could fit in the Z10, but they only claimed it was 32. But I think Blaze played around a little bit, and we had to
if you format the card in the device, then it'll take 64. But if you just stick in a 64 that you haven't formatted, it might not read it.
So that's it. Pretty much, it's got Bluetooth 4.0, GPS, Wi-Fi, NFC,
camera. Oh, front-facing camera on this style of BlackBerry for the first time, which is awesome. 2 megapixel on the front, 720p, 8 megapixel on the back, 1080p. Right. Big change with BlackBerry 10.1 software is they've added HDR into the camera now. So if you go into it, you can actually pull up HDR as a setting, and the photos are quite good with that. I'll take one of you right now. Saving.
So I think that's a pretty big thing. That was something a lot of people are after too. Just little camera improvements. I think they made overall improvements to the camera too in 10.1. So it's a little zippier. The shutter's a little different.
Yeah,
like that.
So I mean, 10.1. It's interesting that the BlackBerry Q10 is actually hitting the market with 10.1, and it hasn't come to the Z10 yet. And there's some features in 10.1 that are specific to the Q10 because there is a keyboard, and then there's some other features on this device that will come to the Z10 as part of that upgrade when it hits. So what are some of the device-specific features for being?
Specifically there's the theme is a big one. I know there's the new dark theme, which is to improve battery life. It's in the various apps, calendar app, BBM, contacts, CrackBerry app.
Right. So I mean, the big thing with the dark theme is with the Q10, BlackBerry's basically said, if you want this phone, it's a workhorse phone. You need your battery to go through the day, through the night, maybe into the next day, maybe into the next night. So battery's bigger, right? First off, this is a 2100 milliamp battery in the Q10 versus 1800 milliamp hour in the Z10. And when you go to the front of the phone, so right off the bat, you have a battery that's, I don't know what the percentage is, 14, 12, 18, something percent bigger.
Do the math.
Do the math. So right away, all things equal, this should have better battery life. But it's not equal. The battery is bigger.
Sure.
The other thing not equal is the screen. On any phone, the size of the display, you're pushing more pixels, it's going to eat up more battery life. But you have a smaller physical display here, so that should be further improving the Q10's battery life. The third big thing is they've switched to OLED instead of an LCD display in here, and or a Super AMOLED display. And with OLED, you basically conserve battery life, especially if you have dark colors you're generating. So colors like black take less power to generate than colors like white. So with the Q10 and the OLED screen, they've gone ahead and really darkened up the theme and everything. So if you go into something like contacts, it's black now. If you go into something like the calendar app, same thing, it's black now. In certain apps, they've actually left white, like the email. So when you're in your hub, it sticks with a white theme. And BlackBerry intentionally did this because they know, emails are something you read a lot of all day. People are just used to white, whether it's Outlook, whether it's Gmail. It's a lot of text reading. So they've stuck with white in that case. But elsewhere in the OS, it's all black. Even our CrackBerry app here, the CB10 app, we've done up a black theme. And it's really interesting because one of the gripes we had with the Z10 was, it was like we were kind of upset they didn't change enough from the look of the old BlackBerry OS, even though they were building a new phone. If you think about the old BlackBerry, it's a very white OS. You get into these screens, it's very white, white, white. And the Z10 kind of stuck with that. And we were like, if you're building a new platform, why not change everything? And it's funny because now with the Q10 and this dark theme, it still feels like a BlackBerry, but it's kind of got that, I don't want to say lipstick, but it's kind of like that lipstick and polish change on the front end that we were hoping to see. Takes a little getting used to.
It definitely takes a lot of getting used to, but I mean, especially on the black phone, obviously it looks good. Like if you look at the CrackBerry app on the black device, it looks good, but at the same time, you wonder, when you get a white device like this, how
it still looks good.
It's going to look. But
I was playing with a white one. You can see some white photos in the review, but that's a big change. Now, all those things are geared at conserving battery life on this device. So I would say we still don't have a great beat on it.
Yeah,
just
after a day,
we haven't really put it down. But all things being equal, it has to. There's no way it can't have better battery life.
When you do the math, and especially too, I mean, if you compare it to something like the Bold 9900, this had a 1230 milliamp battery.
Yeah.
And so it's almost, twice the size almost. But
it's a great point to bring up because when BlackBerry made this, one of the biggest pet peeves everybody had was they made this compromise. They did a very Apple-like thing, and they said, we want to make the thinnest BlackBerry ever. But then they went ahead and they compromised the battery, and they stuck in this little guy. And these BlackBerries with full keyboards are workhorses. People don't really give a crap if it's a little bit thinner. They care that it makes it through the day. And I think BlackBerry probably took a lot of heat from customers, especially enterprise, and that over this phone's battery life. And it's awesome to see that with the Q10, they said, okay, you want a battery? You want a physical keyboard? This is your workhorse. And this will be a workhorse device, I think, like no other. Looks really great. I think what's interesting is if you compare these three devices side by side, you're going to actually, at least to me, the Q10 looks a lot more than the 9900 from a brand ID perspective than the Z10, which we always said kind of looked like a mini playbook.
Sure.
And, we talked to BlackBerry's designers on that, and that was a very intentional decision where, you're building a new platform, you're building BlackBerry 10, you kind of want to build out this BlackBerry 10 product family, but the ID, the brand recognition behind this kind of design, it's so good, you don't want to mess with it. Absolutely. I mean, my mom, right, from across a room can spot a BlackBerry.
Yeah, I mean, anybody's going to know. Like, I take this, I always talk about going in the bar and everybody's got different phones, but they look at it now, they're like, oh, is that the new BlackBerry? But only certain people know, and they know it because of what I do. Yeah. But, when I have this in my hand, and you're sitting there typing on a keyboard, they're like, he's typing on a keyboard, it must be a BlackBerry.
It must be
they're not going to know what it is or how new it is, but they're going to say, oh, that's a BlackBerry. And we've talked too, like this, it's got the BlackBerry feel, and if you're a BlackBerry user, you know what that is. Like it's got the weight to it. It fits in your hand like this, just like the 9900. And when you're on the phone, like
feels good.
It's a BlackBerry, and there's no doubting, and you can tell off the bat that it's 100% BlackBerry.
One of the things that's interesting, and we're going to talk about this missing row of the trackpad and how that changes the uses on the device, but from a pure design aesthetic, it's hard to know, like if you didn't follow BlackBerry and you didn't know, well, hey, the lack of a trackpad means this must be a Q10. I don't know if the average person would know this is actually the newer device than this device. I don't really think it's a problem. I think, the way we discussed it is BlackBerry's been evolving this look of a phone for 10 years, right? You think to the original BlackBerries, the big, thick 8700s, then you hit the curved series 8300s, which, brought in a sort of more of this kind of form factor. And then in, 2008, I think the Bold 9000 came out, which was the first wide-body BlackBerry with this full keyboard. That was a big, thick device, but it had this kind of shape to it. And since then, that's been like the iconic flagship BlackBerry. With the 9900, they really refined this phone a lot. I mean, I still am in love with this phone, even though it came out in August 2011 after being delayed for like a year. Like, this thing was designed years and years ago, which is crazy in smartphone tech to think about when that happened. But they pushed it that far, and I think with the Q10 they didn't say we need to design a better looking phone. They need to design a BlackBerry 10 phone that fit this kind of brand recognition that they have, and they've done it here. The biggest noticeable change for anybody who's an existing hardcore BlackBerry user is going to be getting used to this lack of a trackpad, right? If you're not familiar with BlackBerry 10, obviously it's all new. There's a lot different with it. There's a lot that's sort of similar with it. You still have your grid of icons on the device, so you can scroll through and launch applications. When you launch an application and it goes full screen, you're in the app. There's no home button. You can't go back to the home screen with a button. You actually do a swipe up to go home, and you can multitask between your apps. Touchscreen is very responsive. And then the BlackBerry 10, you have the hub, which is your unified inbox that pulls together everything, your BBM, your text messages, all your communications in one. And that's actually accessible from anywhere. So if you're in an application, you can swipe up, peek into the hub, go into it, or if you want to leave it, you can do that too. That's BlackBerry 10 in a nutshell. Everything else is pretty easy to figure out. I mean, even if you think about things like, settings on BlackBerry 10, there's a lot of familiarity with there. You'll be able to get up to speed with it in literally minutes. A day with the phone, you're going to know where everything is. I think BlackBerry's kept that fairly consistent. But there's a muscle memory that you're going to have to get used to. And even for me, the last year or so, I actually put down this phone to pick up other touchscreens, get used to typing on a touchscreen, knowing that BlackBerry 10 and the Z10 was coming. So coming back to the physical keyboard in the last week, and I started getting practiced up on this again. It's amazing how hardwired I am into knowing there's that menu button and back key. And all of a sudden now, you're in an application and sometimes you just reach up for the trackpad instinctively after, again, a day of use. And you're like, oh yeah, it's not there, I gotta go to the touch screen. And I think for some people, it's just gonna be an adjustment period. I don't think there's a huge hurdle to overcome. I'm sure in the forums we're gonna see some Q10 owners just say, oh my God, I can't believe they got rid of the trackpad and back button. It's awful. I can't use it the same way.
You just have to retrain your thumbs. But that was my thing. I had it here in the first 5 minutes. I was typing something, and immediately my thumb went up to reach for the back button, and I just tapped the screen because it wasn't there. And
but I think the size of the device is very one-handed. I mean, for sure. One of the big things people love with BlackBerry, in addition to the physical keyboard, has always been this notion of one-handed ease of use, where you can just walk around and with your trackpad, you're only moving your thumb, a half inch in any direction. You have full control over the device. Now you have to move your thumb a little bit further, because if you want to swipe down from the top, you have to reach up and swipe down from the top. If you want a back button on the phone, you're going to have to click in sometimes and reach over to use these menus and hit the back button. But I don't know, it seems really manageable. The size of the phone seems really manageable. I think, my hands aren't huge, and I've had no issue just kind of gripping the device. The keyboard is awesome. Maybe we should talk about the keyboard in a second in more detail. But overall, I think the adjustment of learning BlackBerry 10 and learning that there's no trackpad, or learning that there's no back button or menu key, won't be that hard. And for anybody who's never owned a BlackBerry like this before and gets issued one from work or something like that, I think you'll actually really enjoy picking it up and using it. You're gonna like having a physical keyboard for the first time. It's not just business users who like these keyboards too. I mean, people who pound out text messages, social, women with long fingernails. There's a huge market of people who just want this phone. If you send a lot of messages in the day, you can't really fault having a physical keyboard.
I think that's my thing, and I've said it kind of all along. As much as I love the Z10, and I absolutely love the Z10's keyboard, it's the best virtual keyboard I've used, but for me and my use case, it's all communication for me. It's a lot of emails, a lot of BBMs, a lot of SMS, and I'm totally willing to give up the screen size to have that keyboard that I can, 100% of the time just crank, and get stuff done and typed and, call it a day.
Well, and keyboards are an interesting thing for people to talk about because it's a very personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm talking speed, I actually type probably faster on a touchscreen Z10 than I do on the physical keyboard now. It's effortless. There's no pushing. I put my faith in auto correction.
Mm-hmm.
I just tap out and go. But it's not tactile feedback, right? You can't type the same way without having to look. I mean, with a physical keyboard, you can type and I can talk to the camera and I can type and you can get away with it. You just can't do that on a touchscreen the same way, or while walking, or while walking, and that kind of stuff.
I think a big thing too, just kind of going into the software with the full physical keyboard, you have instant action. So instead of having to navigate around the OS to say make a phone call or send a BBM, you type BBM Adam and it automatically pulls it up. You do one tap and you're in the compose screen, so you don't have to go searching for things. And it's a kind of a blown up universal search. Keyboard shortcuts.
Yeah, instant action is kind of like taking home screen keyboard shortcuts.
Mm-hmm.
Because remember on the old OS, you have two things, right? You can set your home screen to either, dial a number when you press on it, which don't think I have any programs in on this.
Swipe that.
I'm swiping my phone.
Swiping it.
BlackBerry 10 gets. I did just swipe.
You swiped it like 4 times.
I'm like, why isn't my phone coming on the speed? You have these types of speed dial things you can do here. Or you can actually go into apps, right? You can turn it on to jump into it.
Yeah, you can switch it between, I had mine set for universal search, so when I started typing, it would start searching, or you can set it for shortcuts to open apps and things like that.
But what you have now is kind of a combination shortcut and universal search. So if I type BBM, are you on here? I think you are. Yeah, BBM Adam, I can just do that, tap, and I launch right into the BBM app. Right into messaging.
With your dark theme.
With my dark theme. Saving battery.
Q10 all the way.
Which is cool. And there's a lot of stuff. There's texting, emailing. We have a whole list of action items. Item actions. Action list. What are they?
Instant action.
Instant actions. Oh, this is all so new to me.
That's like sell like hell. Instant action. Sell like hell.
Other keyboard shortcuts. Oh, one of the big things too. So for people who've picked up the Z10, they've been a little bit frustrated with the speed in which they can plow through email, because you don't have the same kind of shortcut. So if you're viewing an email and you want to go to your next email, you literally have to swipe back to your list of emails, tap into your next email. Mm-hmm. Or if you want to delete an email, it's the same thing where it's like a tap and hold and drag. With this now, there are shortcuts. So you can scroll down using your space bar. You don't even have to swipe. You can hit to the top, go to the top of your list. You can go B to bottom, go back to the top. You can go through and delete using your delete key, that kind of stuff. So there's not as many keyboard shortcuts as on BlackBerry 7 currently. Although talking to the product managers, I think they're really keen to get the feedback from the community of users, the people who buy the Q10, as to what needs to be there. I think BlackBerry has really looked at BlackBerry 10 overall as a fresh start.
Sure.
It's a new platform, so they're starting with nothing and they have to add things back in. So they're trying to keep it as simplified and uncomplicated as possible. And then when people kick and scream for certain features they may have left out, like bedside mode, they add it back in very quickly. And in the case of the Q10, and 10.1, what's interesting is pin-to-pin messaging has come back.
Right.
So with BlackBerry 10, there was only BBM. There was no way to send just a straight pin, almost like a text message, but from BlackBerry to BlackBerry.
Which is something that's been there.
It's been there forever. I think nobody uses it. I don't use it.
Used it.
But there's a small core group of I think people who run the world. It's the what is it? The Rothschild family. The people who basically own the world. That all of America's debt is owed to. I think they really like pin-to-pin messaging. So it's back just for them. Something like that. Or there's snipers around my left. This is so that's another feature that's added back in. Keyboard, it's a win. I think another thing we've talked about a lot on the keyboard is there are some changes because the screen comes all the way down now, and there's no row of buttons, your trackpad and back buttons and everything. basically they flattened out the keyboard. Now, the Porsche design BlackBerry had a similar keyboard layout where they went with a straight row of buttons. I spent a lot of time typing on that, but in that case, the buttons weren't as good. They were very flat, not very sculpted, and that keyboard was never as good, in my opinion, as the 9900's keyboard. With the Q10, though, they've kept the shape of the buttons, or the basic shape of the buttons, like the 9900 has. They've straightened the rows out. It's actually a slightly wider keyboard. There's a little bit more room on it, and all the buttons are of the same size. So, one thing, everybody loves this keyboard. Like, I don't know if I know one person who will say this isn't a great keyboard. So I really panicked that they were actually taking something that was awesome and making it worse on here.
Less awesome.
Less awesome. They're making it less awesome. But in reality, this is the keyboard BlackBerry wanted to build when they built this.
True.
What happened for them was they had to put these buttons on the device. They knew they needed a menu key and a back button. They didn't want it to look too ugly. They wanted to minimize everything. So the curved keyboard was almost kind of a necessity of building around this row of buttons. And this is something they evolved over time. But from a muscle memory standpoint, BlackBerry's always been adamant that a straight row of keys is actually your best way to train your fingers to be good on a keyboard. And if you look at some of the other platforms that have had physical keyboards over the years, even like going back to Palm Trios and that kind of thing, you've typically always had straight rows of keyboards. BlackBerry was sort of the first one that evolved into this. It became a trademark look. I think they built it so freaking good, people like myself started to think if you didn't make a keyboard this way, it was wrong. But I think in the end, or I should say almost in the beginning, going back to this again, it's been very quick to come back to using the device. The actual feel of the buttons is really phenomenal. It's like, it's a short push down. It's a quick response rate. You don't need a lot of effort on it. I was comparing this now to like the Bold 9000's keyboard, which feels like crap in comparison, even though we thought that was the greatest keyboard ever when it came out. So it's a win on the keyboard. Other features on the device too, with BlackBerry 10.1, the big thing with this phone right now is it's ready for enterprise. So when the Z10 came out, it was ready for BYOD, which basically meant if you have your company, you're running a BES 10 server, you could issue this to employees, or employees could bring it in themselves, and the company could put the workspace on the device and the private, and the user could still have their personal phone. But for a lot of the corporate BlackBerry install base, governments, legal firms, places where there's high sensitivity information, and the company buys the phone and hands it out to their employees, they don't want that. They want the unfun BlackBerry, right? They want to be able to take your phone, lock it down, track everything you're doing with it. And BlackBerry 10 didn't have that until BlackBerry 10.1 came out. So if you work at a company where you've been given a BlackBerry over the years, every year, there's a good chance now you're going to get your BlackBerry 10 device, because now IT can lock the heck out of it, make it less fun. They can do things like disable the cameras and all that, track everything you're doing, so don't do anything bad. But it's really huge for RIM, or for BlackBerry, I should say. This is the device that, no matter what, is going to sell incredibly well. Sure. This is not going to be the phone that changes the smartphone game. You're not going to hear every tech blog and mainstream media outlet praising the Q10. But this is going to be the phone over the next 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, that you're going to see in airports and bars and everywhere, because the people buying this thing or being given this thing are the shakers and the movers of the world.
You almost say it's the people, the people who don't care that are going to have it, like that, because a lot of people follow the mobile space, so they know exactly what they want, which devices they want. Sure. But it's people, they're BlackBerry users, whether they've been given one or whether they use it by choice. But it's like, that's the newest BlackBerry, that's what I want. Because it has my keyboard, it does pretty much the same thing that my old phone did, but better. Yeah. I don't care. Give me that phone. So it's like you said, like they're going to be everywhere, and it's just going to be, because people buy it because they know it works and it has the keyboard and it's familiar and it's a BlackBerry, and that's all there is to it. So that'll be.
And one thing, we've been talking about the Q10 a lot, assuming you know a lot about BlackBerry 10 already and have been following the Z10 story. I know a lot of people just haven't been following it. They're like, oh, I don't want a touchscreen BlackBerry, I'm just waiting for the one with the keyboard. So I think we need to take a minute and just talk about how big a difference BlackBerry 10 is from BlackBerry 7. I mean, this is not an evolutionary platform. They basically rebuilt BlackBerry from the ground up. They looked at all the things they've always kicked ass at over the years, all their best-in-class features, best-in-class services. They've taken the best of what they did. I would say they very much looked at everything else in the mobile market and, you know, kind of figured out what made sense from that to come to the BlackBerry platform. And they really have been looking ahead for the next 10 years. You know, if you think about this phone, at the heart of it is literally the two-way pager that got BlackBerry into this gig over a decade ago. And now this is the starting point, right? This is what in 10 years we'll look back at and say, oh, this started as this, right?
Sure.
And they're building the platform out thinking about what these phones are going to do for the next 10 years. And everything that's driven you crazy over the years on this phone doesn't even exist as an issue in this. You know, you don't do battery pulls, you know, over like software updates, which have always been like the most popular articles on CrackBerry. How do I update my BlackBerry? Why can't I do this? Oh, I messed up updating my BlackBerry.
Right.
They don't exist on this. You just hit like the install button. It's over the air. There's never
People
really
were hesitant
issues.
to update through us because you had to reload your apps, you had to log in your information,
Yeah.
you lose a lot of stuff. But now it's, you know, software update, okay,
Everything's there.
2 minutes later it's done, everything's back to the way it was.
Memory too, right? None of these phones have ever had enough memory.
No
And-
hourglassing or any of
Yeah,
that
no
stuff.
hourglass doesn't exist.
You know,
It
you
doesn't
just work,
happen.
like nothing freezes up, you don't have to wait when you're loading. I mean, even the boot up time, you know, you have your little screen that you can see
Yeah.
your percentage and it's, you know, it starts up and you don't have to restart it. I mean, even my Z10 I had for weeks before I had to restart it for something or other, but you know, everything just works now, so.
Yeah, just a totally different BlackBerry. It's a new BlackBerry. But what's funny is with this, I would almost describe it to people as the un-BlackBerry because you know, you're so used to the keyboard and everything else. This is like, yeah, it's made by BlackBerry, but it still felt kind of like not a BlackBerry, just something new and awesome. But now this is like the BlackBerry experience everybody's known, really taken up. You know, you're going to want to touch the screen. It's funny because on a phone like this, I know a lot of BlackBerry users had this, and they still never used the touchscreen on it, even though they could. With this, you're going to want to touch it. The display, it's been interesting to talk about this too, because it's this OLED display, which looks really, really vivid and bright when you use it. Pretty much anybody I hand this phone to who's not a techie is just like, wow, the display looks great. When I hand it to some of the techies out there, they're like, oh, it's an OLED display. I don't like it as much as my LCD display. And that's an interesting tech point because OLED displays are known for having some advantages and some drawbacks, just as LCDs have some advantages and some drawbacks. You know, with OLED, you get this great battery life. The blacks look really, really black. Colors are really vibrant, although I'd say not always as accurate. And as we've been working on the review, you know, we're starting to see that when you line up this phone next to a bunch of other phones, you know, the whites aren't quite as white. They're almost a little hint of bluishness in them. You know, when you put them in a dark room, same kind of thing. But when you just use it, I mean, I don't know. I think the display is awesome. Like, it's crisp. It looks good. I have no complaints. I haven't been out testing in too much direct daylight, but so far in bright light, it's very legible. There's a lot of contrast with the dark theme. So I think it's a good display.
Sure.
And probably will get better maybe with even software tweaks and things like that. Just like we're seeing the camera improve. I mean, basically everything on BlackBerry 10 is improving.
Sure.
Anything else we want to talk about today? I mean, it's like I said, if you're still listening, it means you're interested in this stuff. But really, you should just go buy the Q10 because you have no choice.
If you watch this long, you obviously want one. So
my nickname for this phone, so this one I called, you know, what do we have? We had like Darth Vader and Stormtrooper. I don't care what color it is. This is the BlackBerry Cash Cow because this is the phone that, you know, you're going to have millions upon millions of BlackBerry owners upgrading to over the next few months. And, you know, this is the cash injection that keeps BlackBerry as a company around for a long, long time, building more phones, doing more awesome stuff. But great phone. And for the question, what do you buy, a Z10 or Q10? People are asking it to me, and now it gets really interesting because, and after I say just go out and buy the phone, this is where it gets interesting. It depends who you are. If you're a physical keyboard person and that's what you want, you know that. Just don't even think about it. Just go get the Q10. You know, based on our usage so far, you're going to really like it. Everything's really good. Camera, keyboard, battery life has got to be really good on it. And battery life's a weird thing too, because obviously you can totally greatly vary it depending on your network, depending if you're in a big building on the 45th floor in New York, or if you're...
I'm home all day sitting on Wi-Fi, so my battery lasts like 2 weeks.
Exactly. So, but all things equal, it's going to have great battery life, and there's this BlackBerry spare battery bundle, which is the greatest accessory ever. I'm just all over the place on this podcast, but there's so much to talk about.
It's all right.
If you're not familiar with this, here, hold this for a second.
Sure. Be my pleasure.
BlackBerry came out with this accessory for the Z10, and the Z10 kind of needed it because the battery life is, you know, okay at best. It's not amazing. Spare battery, you get this little case. So if you're on a call or something and your battery's about to die, you can actually just plug it in while you're, you know, in the middle of doing something. It's going to keep the phone going as you talk on it, take your call. And then, you know, if you want to, you can just leave it in. It'll fully recharge the battery. Or you can just take the battery out and swap batteries if you ever want to. And of course, you can do that on a BlackBerry still. Swap the battery, which is kind of nice. I don't know if we're always going to see BlackBerry do that. I mean, obviously the playbook, they didn't. And, you know, the last time we sat down with the BlackBerry design team, I think designers would love to make one without a battery, but they know, you know, power users.
Removable battery?
Yeah, without a
removable battery.
No more batteries. Just runs on air.
Solar battery.
Solar powered. It's coming. People are working on that.
On air.
No, I think it's the device that BlackBerry users don't even think about. Just go upgrade. And I think a lot of other people might give it a try. One of the things that we found really interesting is that there are a lot of people who, you know, who've had smartphones for a lot of years, especially the early adopters, right? Guys who were early on Palm Trios, or they loved WebOS phones, that kind of thing. You know, even Windows Mobile users. A lot of the editors that we work with across the Mobile Nation sites, you had guys like Phil Nickinson or Marcus Adelson, and they're like, yeah, I really want to kind of try the Q10 out because they missed this having a keyboard.
Sure.
And nobody's built a really good keyboard phone for a while now that has the full platform behind it, right? Like a very big screen. I think this is the biggest screen on a keyboard phone ever, or, you know, at 720 by 720 resolution also. Has good apps, you know, has your full ecosystem that you'd expect on a modern touchscreen device. So this is kind of like a new territory for a lot of people who aren't necessarily BlackBerry users, but just haven't been on this type of phone in a while.
I figured the closest thing was the Droid Pro that came out. You know, it kind of tried to be a BlackBerry.
Tried to, but a dead device.
It was terrible.
It takes a company like BlackBerry to build out this kind of experience from end to end. And it's going to be interesting to see how it does. But I think it's going to do pretty awesome. And
what are Kevin's thoughts on a Z10 or Q10?
Oh yeah, that's what we were talking about. I was trying to get away from that question.
Well, I'm putting you
So honestly, I don't know. I now feel even more at home on this but I've been using it lately than on this, which is pretty ridiculous to say because I've been this kind of guy for
long time.
Years, right? You know, over half a decade easily. I've been living on this kind of phone. It's amazing how well I've acclimatized to this, better than I thought. I really thought when BlackBerry 10 was announced, and I knew there was going to be touchscreen in this, I thought I'd be doing the review of the Z10, and then I'd be like, okay, give me my Q10, and just wipe this away.
Right.
But I can pick this phone up and use it so well, and use the keyboard so well, that I never feel like I want to just put it down and run back to my computer later to send a message or something. I use it on the fly. I do make some mistakes. You know, you don't have the same feeling, but I cope through my mobile life extremely well on this. That said, this just feels like a BlackBerry. And I love that it looks like a BlackBerry. Like, I'm a BlackBerry guy. I'm proud to have this phone. I think it looks awesome. It feels awesome. We didn't talk about this back, which, you know, this carbon glass weave just, oh, it feels so good. It's just like a nice, like, look at it. It looks shiny. You know, it looks high tech, and you feel it. It's just got this soft touch, perfect amount of grippiness to it, which is awesome. I'm freaking you out a little bit. I want to finish with little details too, because we kind of said, hey, this phone, you know, doesn't necessarily look newer than this. One of the things that they did a really good job on, I think, with the Q10 is the fit and finish around the device. So this is a great looking phone, and I think, Adam, you said, you know, the silver band makes it just look shiny and new kind of thing. But when you look at the little details on this device, like the frets on the keyboard, you know, the way they've beveled them down at the side, so it just kind of runs seamlessly off. The way they took the display and they really kind of gave it this feeling of stretching it end to end and then just putting this nice bevel around it. You know, the battery door is awesome. You know, even this little detail in the back where this parting line here is just raised a little bit so you don't feel like you're going to scratch the phone when you put it down. It just kind of sits on that and keeps the battery door clean. It's just very polished, like very good build quality, very good materials. This is a stainless steel band around the device, whereas on this, it's not actually stainless steel. You know, even the speaker port, the way they did it, it just looks really good. So, well, I actually don't have an answer. I'm definitely going to rock the Q10 for a while. And then I have a feeling what's going to happen is I'm not going to want to switch back. Because once you get into that rhythm, and the way I type a lot of messages, I'm like, I'll be right there, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. I don't need to train the keyboard how to type, right? I'm very much my personality. I can push it out through all my messaging, the way I write emails, because I have a physical keyboard that's not going to mess around with me. And I love that. I'm Kevin being Kevin through this phone. Whereas with any other touchscreen phone where you start getting auto text and auto correction and that, and you have to rely on it if you want to be quick, you tend to conform a little bit more to the device. Absolutely. Whereas this is like Kevin. Yeah. So I have a feeling I'm not going to put this down. But we'll see. You know, I'd love the big screen on this. I mean, probably I'll just buy both. Actually, I will buy both.
I think you already have both, technically. So
yeah, I'm good. There you go. Buy both.
Perfect. Problem solved.
Okay, guys, we're going to wrap this up. Adam, any closing words?
No, I think I'm in love with the Q10, and I think you should buy one.
White or black?
Actually, for the first time ever, I think I might go with white.
Really?
I think so.
It's a hot phone in white.
Yeah, I think, I definitely love the black, and I've always been a black fan of the BlackBerries, but I think something about it, we've seen them a couple times in white, and there's, I think it's going to be my first white device, but I think I'm going to definitely go on the Q10 route, because I miss the keyboard, and I'm pretty excited to have it. So.
Well, there you have it. Read the review. If you have any questions, ask us. We'll be doing a ton of follow-up content and everything around the Q10. Just head to crackberry.com/Q10 for everything related to the Q10. Q10, 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 that's it.
Q10 and more Q10.
Yeah, CrackBerry Q10, you, match made in heaven, Kevin and Adam out. Bye Q10.
Bye Q10.